This has been a very busy year for the government and your ministry, especially. Looking back, how would you rate yourself and the ministry as a whole?
First, just like you put it, it's been an interesting year. We started with a lot of expectations, having just done 1 year into this administration. And along the way, of course, a lot of things happened that have actually shaped even the politics of the country and the governance. The president had to dissolve cabinet at some point and reconstitute it. And a number of things actually changed when you think about the protests that happened. But away from that, the government has still been able to do quite a lot that has improved things. Looking at where we started the year and where we are today, essentially in terms of key basic food items, there's been a lot of progress that has been achieved. In the context of the ministry, given that the ministry is charged with the responsibility to not just look after the security of the nation, but also to coordinate a number of government programs. And maybe just to make you appreciate and understand the ministry better, the ministry has 3 state departments. So there's a state department for internal security and national administration, which I head. Then there's a state department for correctional services, headed by PS Salome Biako. And then there's a state department for immigration and citizen services, headed by PS Bitok. And all these 3 state departments have contributed to the success of the ministry. When you think about the government's digitization agenda, to date we have in excess of 20,000 services, government services that have been digitized, that has made it easy for Kenyans to access services. In the space of correctional services, there are also a lot of changes that have happened, particularly with the Kenya Prisons Service. In internal security and national administration, which I head, one is that the country is more secure today than it was a year ago, and we are continuing to make a lot of strides in keeping the country safe. We've had reduced incidences of banditry, which was a big headache going to the end of last year and beginning of the year. And there's been a significant drop in the numbers. There's been a lot of recovery that has been made. In the space of terrorism, again, we've been able to keep the country safe, particularly in the northeastern and the coastal regions. Within the element or aspect of coordination of government services, we are reaping the fruits of better coordination that has been spearheaded by the National Government Administration officers, whether it's in form of what we are doing with the Ministry of Education, what we are doing with the Ministry of Health, what we are doing with the Ministry of Agriculture, and all the other players, including with the senior citizens, the Inua Jamii program that we have done with the Ministry of Labor and made it possible for close to 2 million senior citizens to receive their monthly stipend on time. Yes.
All right, thank you very much. So, Bona PS, so early this year or mid this year, there were the Gen Z protests that happened in the country, and we saw people going into the streets. But we also saw a lot of abductions, a lot of enforced disappearances. So, number one, what is the ministry's stance on protests, especially because constitutionally everyone understands that they have the right to protest, but there are some of those challenges. But then also number two, when President Ruto came into power, he disbanded the DCI's Special Service Unit that was notorious for abductions and extrajudicial killings that have happened or that happened then before his term. So has this unit been brought back as a secret unit, or what is going on?
So first, we had the protest that was largely spearheaded by Gen Zs way back in June. And out of those protests, a number of things happened. And we can attribute some of the changes in terms of even the policing that has happened after that to some of those protests. Now, we have had also a fair share of learning as government in terms of managing such kind of protests, because this was definitely an unprecedented occurrence. We've had a series of engagements, starting with the president himself, engaging the youth of this country, listening to them, trying to understand what their concerns are. And to a large extent, that has been responded to or dealt with. Of course, there are still underlying or unresolved issues, particularly when you think about the issues around unemployment, around underemployment, which requires a much more long-term intervention. And some of the programs that the government is running is meant to try and address that gap. And this again is not just purely, cannot purely be left to the government. We must be able to bring everybody on board, particularly the private sector players. When you think about the issues around employment, in terms of Kenyans who are in formal employment properly, just about 30%, if not less, are employed by the government. The bulk of it is by the private sector. And as a government, part of our responsibility is to be able to create an environment that allows the private sector to flourish, so that then we create more opportunities. If you look at the affordable housing program, beyond addressing the issues around settlement and housing, it's also at the heart of addressing the challenge around unemployment. To date, we have close to 200,000 Kenyans who are directly employed in this sector. And there's a huge opportunity for us to grow that space. When you think about manufacturing, all the ingredients that goes into the housing sector, then you start to appreciate how progressively we'll be addressing some of the concerns or the challenges that we have, particularly with the youths and also around unemployment. With regards to policing, one of the first assignments that the president undertook was to give the police their financial independence and autonomy, as well as the operational independence, so that then the Inspector General of Police takes full responsibility in terms of the operations of the police. Besides that, there is the independent institutions that we created under the 2010 Constitution that helps to oversight and support with the elements of accountability for the police. And where there are issues that are of concern in terms of possible excesses, then we have very elaborate mechanisms of dealing with it. There are no special forces to deal with any form of disruptions or interference that may exist. And what the police do is to be able to arrest. I'm sure if you look at where we are today, we've not had any cases of extrajudicial killings. And the point for me is that we must continue to strengthen these independent institutions so that then they remain accountable to the people of Kenya. And where we have issues that we feel the institutions or agencies of security are not doing well, then we must be able to take them through the legal mechanisms that exist within our constitutional dispensation.
All right, thank you very much. So let's go back to administration for a bit. So the issue is corruption. So when you look at the police, which falls under your ministry, they've been ranked as the most corrupt. They've been ranked very low. You look at traffic police, you look at, it's across board. And it feels like corruption is a bit systematized in terms of it feels like the system is condoning corruption from where we are coming from. And I'll give you a case in point. Say you're stopped by a traffic policeman, and whether you are on the wrong or not, the first instinct is give me something small. If you then don't comply, then he has the option to either, if you are on the wrong, he has the option to either take you in, or if you're not on the wrong, he could easily create something, but it's up to you to fight it in court and, just get yourself out of that. Now, the inconvenience of that whole system is what makes people take the easy way out. And I feel lack of having any clear systems in that direction is then incentivizing this other side of things. And we can talk about other examples of other places, businesses when, you're trying to get a license and all that. So I know there was a report, the Maraga report, the presidential task force that gave recommendations. But what is the ministry doing before the report is implemented?
So first is that, yes, the Maraga task force made a number of recommendations. Some of them touch on what needs to be done to deal with the issue of corruption. Now, I would want us to look at corruption not just as a police thing, because the police officers are Kenyans. They are part of the entire society, or that we call Kenya. And for the police officer to take a bribe, someone must be willing to give bribe. Of course, you've talked about the inconveniences, which then would give people an excuse to opt for giving out a bribe. So as a government, number one is how do we address these inconveniences? Now, one of the biggest achievements that we have as an administration is to digitize a number of government services. So whether you're looking for a license, increasing them from 300 to 20,000 services. That has significantly reduced the appetite, one, for people to transact or to handle cash, meaning that you drastically bring down the element of corruption in transactions or in access to government services. Now, within the police service, particularly the traffic police, again, we've talked about capacitating the police. We've talked about improving the terms and conditions of service of the police, so that then we don't have an excuse of why someone would want to look for extra coin to keep them or to sustain their lifestyle. But beyond that, there is what we must do with ourselves as Kenyans on why we must be able to all fight corruption and avoid being involved. Now, we are working on introducing what has worked in other jurisdictions for the police, what we are calling the body cameras. And in other jurisdictions, you find with the introduction of these body cameras, in most cases, you end up with a situation where actually the culprits are actually not even the police. Now, this is going to give us a very good opportunity where we are able to play out what is even the level of interaction. What has this person said or discussed with the police even before someone is charged, or either there is an assault or someone has been arrested. And for me, this is something that is going to be a big game changer, not just in helping us fight or curb corruption, but also to deal with other criminal elements or aspects of what we see on a day-to-day basis, particularly where the police are accused of not being good enforcers of law and order. So that then this then would become something that is a responsibility of both the police, but also as well as the public. And for sure, when people know that someone is watching, for some reason, we tend to be well behaved. And I think with the cameras on our streets, in our offices, it would help us to be a bit more disciplined and a bit more responsible. And it will go a long way in helping us deal with the question of corruption, because it is something that has a net effect of taking away all the good things we might want to achieve as a country.
Just a follow-up on the body cam. Would the detectives from the DCI be also wearing the cams, or will it just be regular police? And before you respond to that question, could you kindly differentiate for us what does DCI do and what does regular police do, and where are the lines for places for officers like the NIS? Where are the lines drawn, and what exactly do each force do?
So each of these services have their unique role. Without necessarily going into the details, DCI, of course, we are looking at criminal investigations. Your regular police is the enforcement of law and order, and they are actually the officers or the security officers you see on a day-to-day basis. You leave this building, you're on the road, there will be a policeman on the road. You go to a police station to report a matter, you'll have the police officer taking a record or arresting you. The DCI are more focused on criminal issues, particularly the ones that are complex, that requires a bit of investigations, a bit of resources to go in, so that then when someone is eventually taken to court, then we have something that is easy to prosecute or defend. Not to say that every matter that goes to court has to lead to prosecution. Of course, NIS is more about intelligence, just picking what is happening, both good and bad. Yes.
So would the detectives from the DCI also wear the body cams if they do come true?
You know, the detectives, they will not be, they're not public facing. Now, your regular police is very public facing. Now, whether they wear body cams or not, there's an element of officers being able to identify themselves when they are interacting with the public, particularly where you are being picked up for questioning. But where we are gathering intelligence or investigating a criminal activity, I think we need to look at it more broadly, so that then we don't take away the ability of the officers to pick something that would be good for public order and safety.
All right. I would like to take you back to a moment that we will all not forget from this year, June 25th, the breach of Parliament. Did you have prior knowledge? And to add on that, what do we know now that we didn't know then?
I think maybe without going to whether there was prior knowledge or not, for me the most important thing is there is what we know now that we didn't know then, in terms of the manner in which the protests were organized. We also know that there were criminal elements that were involved. Part of that, there's still investigations going on. But then beyond that, I'm aware that there are also people who have been charged around that. So there's so much that we picked from the whole thing, including even the way the protests were organized, which, like I've said, were not the traditional way in which we've seen protests being done. And then, of course, the use of technology.
All right. So let's switch gears to something else in security. So cybersecurity. So what is your ministry doing about it, especially in this digital age where there is a lot of impersonification and all that, and also considering that sometimes when you report these things to the police, they probably would not even understand what probably phishing is, and you you are told someone just impersonated you and all that. So what is the ministry doing so that that is tackled? And also in the same breath, there is also a lot of gold scams that we are seeing a lot. Kenya feels like it's becoming a hub of uh, smugglers and wash cartels. So what is the ministry doing about those?
So first, when we talk about cybersecurity, one is we all appreciate the role of technology in making our lives better. And in the process, of course, then people become smarter to see how best they've been able to use technology, not just to make things better, but at the same time to also breach security. Today, we have laws that govern the conduct of use of technology. Unfortunately, these laws were passed in 2018. Now, 2018 and today, a lot has changed, a lot has happened, and there's need for us to relook at these laws and possibly make amendments where necessary, so that we are better equipped to fight the threats on cyber security. But even as we wait to look at the laws, what we have done is that we have developed regulations. Actually, the regulations were passed earlier this year, around February, March, which has given life to the laws of 2018. Now, these regulations are much more up to date. And for us as a ministry, the point then is we must be able to follow up and implement these regulations, even as we wait to review the laws itself. The other thing is that we don't live in isolation. So there are regional caucuses and forums, as well as international caucuses and forums where we participate in for purposes of information sharing, for purposes of also helping to build capacity of our officers, both uniformed and non-uniformed, so that we can better fight the threats around cyber security. Now, we are also calling on the private sector to also put in a lot more work and also work closely with government, because a lot of new technology is developed by the private sector. A lot of the breaches, most of the times, are done from the private sector. And there's need for us to work very closely to deal with and address that threat. You've talked about the scams around gold and all that. And for me, this is part of the transnational organized criminal networks. And again, we have specific divisions within our security agencies that are charged with dealing with this. And they are not doing this in isolation. There is Interpol that work with, because yes, there's gold that is being mined in this country, but there is also gold that is transshipped through this country that comes from other countries. So it calls on everybody to work together to address it. You definitely must be aware that we've had instances where people have been taken to court through the DCI, for either being involved in some of these rackets, and we must continue to be on high alert to address this. Yeah. So to Kenyans, this has been a very eventful year. We've had our highs and lows, but most importantly, we have been able to hold our ground, and God has been gracious to take us to almost the end of the year. And as we break for the Christmas and New Year, I want to wish all of you happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and happy and prosperous new 2025. Thank you.